You're listening to the Around the Huddle podcast, powered by PAC-Hub. Around the Huddle, college sports beyond the game.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Around the Huddle podcast, where we talk about college sports beyond the game. My name is John Gross. I'm a play-by-play broadcaster, but beyond sports, I love politics, law, economics. You combine all of those things together and you get the current state of college athletics. So on this show, we talk about every issue under the sun related to college sports beyond the result of last night's game. If you've seen some of our previous episodes, we've spoken with coaches, we've spoken with compliance officers. We also spoke to an attorney who we will speak to again today to talk about a couple major developments that just happened in the last week or so in the world of college athletics. But before that, a reminder that we are powered by PAC-Hub. Take a look at the bottom of your screen. PAC-Hub is about connecting athletes with opportunities. Visit www.pac-hub.com to learn more, to sign up. Let's say that you are a student athlete and you are at school A, but you want to leave school A and find your next institution. So you enter the NCAA transfer portal. Well, when you're in there, how are you going to stand out? All that a coach sees in the portal is your name and your NCAA ID. That's it. Nothing about your measurables, nothing about your stats, nothing about your transcripts, GP, things of that nature. That is where PAC-Hub comes into play. PAC-Hub is a place where you sign up, your stats, your measurables, all sorts of different information and metrics go in there. And it allows coaches to narrow down their search to find a right-handed pitcher, to find a quarterback. Any specification that a coach might want, it's in there. So if you're a student athlete, you're looking to transfer, this is your way to stand out from the crowd because so many people are in the portal and they may not find a home. PAC-Hub will get you there. And then if you're a coach from the opposite perspective, you want that right-handed pitcher. You want that player that's going to take your program to the next level. Utilize PAC-Hub. You can, again, as I said before, specify your searches by position, by a whole lot of different things. It is really a one-stop shop. It runs in tangent with the transfer portal, and it allows your team to go to the next level by finding that missing piece. Once again, www.pac-hub.com. That is pac-hub.com. Okay, our guest today is our first repeat guest. And we did say when we had him on a couple of weeks ago that we were going to have him back because this guy is full of knowledge, so informative. I learn so many things every time that I speak with him, and his name is Sam Finkel. Sam is currently a sports and entertainment attorney with Fox Rothschild, working on sports immigration law, NIL, and other sports matters generally. He was a former undergraduate assistant coach with the Penn State football team during some very successful seasons from 2017 until 2020. And he's a proud graduate of Penn State's Smeal College of Business and Temple Beasley School of Law. He graduated from both institutions with honors. Sam is also a staff writer for Inside the Birds, focusing predominantly on analytics. And he has created a linear regression model projecting NFL contract values for various positions. If you want to learn more about what that is, go back and watch our first episode with Sam. He breaks that all down. So without further ado, let's welcome in today's guest, our first repeat guest, the one and only Sam Finkel. Sam, good to see you again, bud. Thanks for coming on today.
Great to see you as well. It's such an honor to be the first repeat guest. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right, I'm looking behind you. We have to talk a little bit of football. Tell us about the play that you have drawn up.
Yeah, so basically what we got here is one of my favorite play calls when we were at Penn State. It is an inside zone read with the tight end coming across the backside of the formation. Basically what happens is your first read here is if you have access on the boundary, you are going to throw that speed out every time. It's just as simple as that. If not, then that X is going to do a must outside release go route and just to clear out the play. Otherwise, it's your traditional inside zone, basically reading the outside end over here. We always had an aggressive pull mentality. And so basically, if there's a gray read, You read the eyes athlete demeanor. If you're not sure, we tell our quarterback to pull because we like to be aggressive like that. Then we go to a secondary read of the alley player, and whoever the alley player is, the tight end's coming across and can catch the ball. If the alley player follows the tight end, the quarterback knifes up the field. If the alley player goes to the quarterback, then he'll just dump it off to the tight end. We have our H and our Z doing MDM, or most dangerous man blocking. It's a great red zone play, and actually one of the first plays I got to call in practice when I was doing some of the scrimmages. It was always one of my favorites, and you see it a lot actually. It's like a modern version of the triple option, and I love that. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Who was the quarterback when you called the play in practice, if you remember? You're on the spot here.
It was either Michael Johnson Jr. or Taquan Roberson.
Okay, there we go. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Sam is a man of many interests. He, of course, knows football inside and out, but he also knows sports law inside and out. And we could talk football for days, Sam. But let's dive into a couple of these big topics that have popped up in the last week or so, because the world of college athletics is always changing. We're going to start with something that came out from the Biden Department of Education on one of the final days of the Biden administration. This relates to Title IX and NIL. And actually, speaking of Title IX, I did not do this on purpose, but I realized I'm wearing a shirt that says everyone watches women's sports in French. So let's get a little more in depth on Title IX. What exactly does Title IX entail?
Before we do that, I just have to give my obligatory disclaimer. I'm glad to be on this podcast, but everything I say is of my personal opinion. It doesn't reflect the opinion of my firm, and it should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a legal issue, find a lawyer. We're good at this. And now that we got that out of the way, let's talk some Title IX. Title IX, essentially what it does is it tried to create equity between men and women's sports. So what it does is it looks at the general population of the student body. And what it does is it looks at that proportion of whether you have 50% men, 50% women. And when you do, then it basically says the opportunities, the investment, and the aid needs to be equivalent based on that proportion. And when it's easy when it's 50-50 because that's what an equal split. But that's not how all colleges are built. So some colleges would have like 60% men and 40% women. In that case, 60% of those funds would need to be distributed to 60% men and 40% women, or vice versa, depending on how it was, the general population was made up, essentially.
Got it. Okay, so Title IX, again, 1972. It's been on the books for about 53 years now as law. NIL is something that is a lot newer than that. And there are a lot of questions about how things may change in the coming months with the House settlement, which is what we discussed pretty much for the entirety of our previous episode. So if you want to learn more about the House settlement and all that entails, go check that out as well, our first interview with Sam. But in the final days of the Biden administration, the Department of Education issued a 9-page order basically stating, amongst many other things, but payments to college athletes through NIL revenue sharing agreements, quote, must be made proportionately available to male and female athletes. So what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, so essentially what it's saying is under this revenue sharing model that was proposed under the House settlement is that proportion that I just discussed would apply to these NIL payments too. However, they're subject to some carve-outs for third parties that is not even like a fully guaranteed carve-out. What the memo or what the fact sheet actually says is that it doesn't apply to third parties. However, which, by the way, just to be like clear, a third party are these collectives that have been distributing NIL money, sometimes in conjunction with the school, sometimes separate, but there is school involvement typically in these collectives. And what's interesting is that it said that the school is not relieved of its, obligation to follow Title IX just because they would be paid out by a third-party collective. And so it gets very messy and complicated and almost like not clear advice, which, as we discussed last time, are we really surprised that the government is not giving clear advice? But basically what it's saying is if the school is making a distribution, it must follow Title IX. That's that. At the end of the day, that is the simplest version of what it is.
Okay. And just to clarify that revenue sharing, the initial settlement, the House settlement is basically saying $20.5 million is the maximum that a school can pay divided up amongst its student athletes. Now, schools don't have to opt into that, right? They don't have to opt into the full 20.5 million, but that's the money that they're saying would be distributed to student athletes. So how does that look now? Because you have football, 105 student athletes in a football team. You have, men's basketball, and then you have a whole bunch of sports. But football is by far and away the biggest sport, and that's the cash cow of college athletics. So how does football play into a decision like this?
Yeah, it's pretty much the most pivotal part of it, right? Because you're going to be needing to figure out how to match these NIL payments for football, which is by far the largest sport. I was going to say men's sport, but just sport in general. But you're going to need to make that proportional to women's sports, which is in theory great for women's sports, right? Because you would be getting that, you would have to be proportional to football, which has 105 players versus women's basketball, which has like 11, more than that, but like you get my point.
12 to 15 typically, or something in the range. Yeah,
exactly. But essentially you'd be matching that 105 to all the women's sports, which again, I am a big proponent of women's sports. I work predominantly with women's sports professionally. And I think it's an incredible thing. However, I think this is going to create a lot of issues that may hinder college sports in general. Because as much as a women's sport fan I am a sports fan, right? So I want to see sports thrive regardless of what it is. And I think that this policy might hinder sports just in general, college sports in general.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm one of the PAC-Hub's AI specialists. Today, I want to show you why PAC-Hub is the ultimate platform for college baseball players looking to transfer to a new college program. First, let's take a look at our extensive network of coaches. With over 150 coaches actively using our system, you have a huge pool of experts to connect with. Imagine having access to all these experienced coaches searching for talent like yours. You even have the ability to connect with any of these coaches via our internal messaging system. This means more opportunities to showcase your skills and find the perfect new team. Now let's switch gears and see things from a coach's perspective. Coaches can easily search for athletes by position or stat. Let's say I'm looking for a left-handed pitcher with good pitching stats. With just a few clicks, I can find top-performing pitchers who meet my criteria. This efficient search functionality ensures that coaches find the perfect fit for their teams and athletes get matched with opportunities that suit their strengths. PAC-Hub is all about connecting talent with opportunity. Whether you're an athlete looking to transfer to a new college team or a coach searching for the next star player, PAC-Hub has the tools you need to succeed. Don't miss out on the chance to be part of this amazing community. Join PAC-Hub today and take the next step in your baseball journey. Visit www.pac-hub.com to sign up now.
I did see a lot of pushback on this decision, most notably from Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He basically said, hey, not everyone is Michael Jordan. They might want to all be Michael Jordan, but not everyone is Michael Jordan, and not everyone brings in as much value and is quote unquote as valuable as somebody else playing a different sport maybe. So here's the question. The Biden DOE issues this in the final days of the Biden administration. How much water does this announcement actually hold now that the Trump administration is in office?
I'll put it this way. It holds water until it doesn't. Okay. So this is the interpretation of the Department of Education right now. However, that is subject to A, change, or B, be removed if the Department of Education no longer exists.
Right.
And actually, if the Department of Education no longer exists, it becomes even more murky because does this fact sheet still apply? Like there would need to be some clarity, and I'm not sure we would get the answers to that. And hopefully the Department of Education still does exist because I think it is essential. And I'm going to put that out there just because I can.
Absolutely. And that, of course, is one of the things that, at least as a candidate, Donald Trump did suggest, eliminating the Department of Education. Now, when it comes to kind of solving all of this, is the best solution still federal legislation? I know there continues to be talk about that, but are we going to see any movement on that?
We're not going to see it probably, but I still think federal legislation is essential because there's just too many. It's too loose of rules in some areas, and like there's just no consistency throughout the nation, and it creates disparity. And what's interesting about college, and I think what makes college exciting, especially in March for March Madness, is the fact that there is some sort of parity, right? You can have teams that are juggernauts lose to 12 seed teams. Like it's cool to see parity, right? That's part of the fun. And I think disparity in sports can and is inevitable, right? I think that is a big part of what can happen. But when you're creating it through rules versus talent, I think you're losing a lot of what makes college sports fun.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. There's nothing like a good upset. And who knows if we will see more of that. I mean, we look at the college football playoff, for example. Did we really, okay, maybe seeding wise, technically we saw some upsets, but for the most part, it was outside of, I guess, Oregon. The teams who kind of looked to be some of the better teams throughout the season played we didn't see those major upsets, unless you want to consider Ohio State an underdog, which I personally would not consider them an underdog with a $20 million roster.
Right. I was just about to say, when you spend that much money, you can't really be an underdog.
Exactly.
Although I would have liked to see Penn State play Ohio State again. I think it would have been a little bit of a different result this time.
I'm with you. All of the Penn State players, after losing earlier in the season, were tweeting, "Hey, we want them again. We want them again," but didn't get the chance to do that. Now, I guess that's one of the benefits of NIL is now what we see from Penn State guys are coming back. So that's certainly a great thing to see if you're a Nittany Lion fan, but which we both are, just to be straight up about it. One other thing I want to talk about, you kind of touched on this, just how nobody seems to really have an answer for a lot of these situations. The document ends, the fact sheet ends by saying, as we kind of referenced, schools still may have obligation to follow the Title IX if third-party NIL deals create disparity. But since NIL deals widely vary and continue to evolve, the fact sheet doesn't offer specific guidance on Title IX's application to the matter that includes NIL collectives. So are they basically also just kind of throwing their hands up and saying, we don't know what to do?
That's what it appears. Or if they're not saying we don't know what to do, is we don't care enough to tell you. And that maybe is a more nihilist view of them. It's a little cynical, but it's just like, it feels like a Hail Mary, to be honest with you. This fact sheet as one of the last things the Biden administration did. And I think the heart is in the right place with this. I think it's important to continue to grow and provide opportunities for women's sports. But I don't know if this is the best solution to actually do that. Not to be overly critical of, this policy and of the Biden administration, because I really do think the intentions were so pure and I support it. But I don't know if what was provided in this 9 pages provides the type of clarity that is necessary to overcome any kind of, it doesn't provide a clear outcome
Right.
for schools, and it doesn't provide. So one of the good things about, policies like this and about regulation is it allows a school to know where they stand, right? And what this doesn't do is give the school some security and know we can do this and we can't do that. it actually makes it murkier. And from the school's perspective, you're adding restraints, but you're not providing clarity. And so when you add restraints and don't provide clarity, you're creating more uncertainty than if the policy memo wasn't drafted in the first place.
Gray areas galore. That's what it sounds like.
For sure. But that being said, I do think the way NIL is now, women's sports is being ignored or not as emphasized. Maybe ignored is not the proper way to phrase it, but they at least are not being emphasized as much as men's sports. And I do think that it needs to be changed. But I'm not sure this mechanism is correct.
I actually read an interesting article that was linking this discussion about Title IX and the impact that NIL could have on women's sports and the potential of TikTok shutting down, because it said that actually a lot of women athletes, their primary source of NIL comes through deals on TikTok or sponsorships of that kind as well. So we'll see so many crazy changes. I'm sure that this will continue to evolve as the new administration comes into office. Anything else you want to add on this discussion before we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, there was one interesting part of this discussion that I don't know if we necessarily covered. We kind of hinted at it, but one of the suggestions is making an exemption or exception for football, removing it from the equation completely, and then having all other sports have to be Title IX compliant. And I think that's an interesting solution, but by doing that, you're removing one of the largest, if not the largest, and I do believe it is the largest revenue generator in all sports. So then does that limit your revenue sharing? It creates a lot of problems, but I do think it's an interesting solution that's at least worth mentioning. I wanted to also say that I think that Title IX has also led to some sports being cut over the years on both the men's and the women's side because you're playing an accounting game at that point. And I think that's an unintended consequence of it. And I'm not sure if this is 100% the case, but my father, he wrestled in college for Temple University. And they cut the program in 1985. And I'm not sure if this was a direct result of Title IX, but I wouldn't be surprised because of the way that you had to balance the books, right? And I want to see every sport have an opportunity to exist, and I want to see schools support them. And I think when you get to, it's just, to me, it's a shame that we have such a monetary perspective on it, right? And balancing the books. And it just leads to this overarching conversation about how pervasive money is in sports and maybe even larger in society. And I just think that's worth mentioning. I'm not sure I'm providing any clarity or answers, but maybe I'm like the government there. So at least bring up issues.
No, it's a fascinating discussion, but I think what you're saying is spot on. We're not having this conversation right now if money isn't as pervasive as it's been. I mean, this is what all of this is about. NIL allowing student athletes to rightfully so make money off of their name, finally, at long last. But when you look at the years and years of how money has impacted college sports and in many cases exploited people as well, we are in the midst of really a revolution in college athletics. Who knows how it's all going to play out? But no, this was fascinating. We could keep talking about this topic. I'm sure that at some point, some new decision will come out, and we'll talk about that again related to Title IX.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm one of the PAC-Hub's AI specialists. Today, I want to show you why PAC-Hub is the ultimate platform for college baseball players looking to transfer to a new college program. First, let's take a look at our extensive network of coaches. With over 150 coaches actively using our system, you have a huge pool of experts to connect with. Imagine having access to all these experienced coaches searching for talent like yours. You even have the ability to connect with any of these coaches via our internal messaging system. This means more opportunities to showcase your skills and find the perfect new team. Now let's switch gears and see things from a coach's perspective. Coaches can easily search for athletes by position or stat. Let's say I'm looking for a left-handed pitcher with good pitching stats. With just a few clicks, I can find top-performing pitchers who meet my criteria. This efficient search functionality ensures that coaches find the perfect fit for their teams and athletes get matched with opportunities that suit their strengths. PAC-Hub is all about connecting talent with opportunity. Whether you're an athlete looking to transfer to a new college team or a coach searching for the next star player, PAC-Hub has the tools you need to succeed. Don't miss out on the chance to be part of this amazing community. Join PAC-Hub today and take the next step in your baseball journey. Visit www.pac-hub.com to sign up now.
On the topic of NIL and the transfer portal, one other major news note that happened really came to a head in the last week or so. The Xavier Lucas story. Xavier Lucas is a defensive back who had a limited role at Wisconsin this season for the Badger football team. Had 12 tackles, guy who got in there, made some plays, but a young player. He tried to enter the transfer portal. When you try to do that, you go to your school, you get the sign off, the okay, that you're good to go. They enter you into the portal, and then from there you can leave and go where you want. Typically that goes off without a hitch. This time it was different. Wisconsin said no. Not only did they say no, but Wisconsin has alleged that the University of Miami was tampering in this matter. They basically said, no, we are not letting you leave because Miami has been breaking the rules or doing unethical things to try to get you to come here. This is something that I think a lot of schools allege other schools of doing. Maybe we haven't seen a confrontation as direct as this. But when all this happened, Xavier Lucas does something unorthodox. He says, and his lawyer says, okay, rather than going into the portal, how about we just unenroll from Wisconsin and then enroll at Miami and go play for the football team? And the NCAA comes out and says, quote, the NCAA rules don't prevent the student athlete from unenrolling at a school, enrolling in a new school, and competing immediately. So that basically just bypasses the transfer portal. Okay, Sam, let's get your thoughts on this. This has the potential to be a revolutionary move in college athletics. What's your overall assessment of this bizarre situation?
Well, I just want to say one other thing that happened is the NCAA they said, yeah, actually, it's acceptable what you did. So it's not only that he unenrolled and re-enrolled, the NCAA was like, yeah, that's fine. We can't stop that. Now, that creates a whole set of problems in and of itself, right? Because it's a very, as simple of a solution as that is, it's novel, right? Because there are procedures and protocols in the transfer portal that has been promulgated by the NCAA and that have been followed historically. So Darren Heitner, who is the attorney who I've met and who spoke on a panel that I've seen for the NIL symposium I was telling you about last week or a couple weeks ago, whenever I was on the show. He really is so knowledgeable and kind of genius in this move. And it worked, right? Subject to whatever litigation that may or consequences that may ensue. And I'm not going to comment on that part of it. But really, it's such a novel approach just to unenroll and then enroll in another school. And I faced a similar situation with a client, and I'm going to obviously keep names and other parts confidential. But there was an FBS school that was holding my client hostage, essentially. So they wouldn't put his name in the transfer portal. They wouldn't support it, but they also wouldn't guarantee him a spot on the team. And it was this whole dilemma where they were saying, we're not going to do what we need to do on our part to make sure you can transfer. However, if you do come back, they were being very punitive for his desire to enter the transfer portal, which is obviously wrong. And the school was abusing its power. Now, fortunately, we were able to negotiate some stuff behind the scenes and get it to happen. But to me, that shows that this is probably not too uncommon that schools would be holding their players essentially hostage. Again, we represent an interested party in this situation, so I'm not going to comment too much about the actions of the conferences or the schools. But as a hypothetical or thought exercise, I definitely can comment generally on it, and I'm happy to do so. But it's very interesting that was the solution, and I think it's going to cause a lot of issues, I think is the best way to put it, in the future. And I think they're still subject to some exceptions, right? So he couldn't unenroll and then enroll in the middle of the season, because like that seems like a common line that you would see, right? Like I saw an article where somebody was joking that, or maybe it was a video where someone was joking and said, well, what about at halftime? If he's losing, could he unenroll and then enroll and then suit up for the other team? And that you're not going to see that. That's not going to be the case. It's still within one academic season. You can't actually do that. But it really is a game changer, what has been done, right? It's so simple, yet so genius. And I love it. It was a great move by Darren Heitner.
Yeah, it really is revolutionary. And again, just to clarify why Wisconsin, at least in their mind, feels that they were in the right with this, they said, quote, credible information indicating impermissible contract between Xavier and the University of Miami. The Big Ten also jumped in, suggesting tampering and contract interference. So there are some things from their perspective, but from the student athlete perspective, does this make the transfer portal obsolete?
It very well could. Very well could. I don't know. Since this is the first instance of it, I don't think we can say with certainty one way or the other. But I do think it might, right? Because if the NCAA just allows you to unenroll and then enroll, what is even the point of the transfer portal? Right? It creates that kind of issue. And I think we won't know until there's a resolution to this, which honestly could take years. And I don't think we have the luxury of that. So
no, I'm with you. And one of the things that I find so fascinating about all of these changes is when it comes to making changes, a lot of times we think of like the top-down approach, right? We think of the leaders at the top of the pyramid making these decisions to alter how things go. If you look at a lot of the changes that we've seen in college athletics, a lot of times it's been more of a bottom-up approach. I mean, you could think back to even the whole Ed O'Bannon situation, right? That was an individual, a former player who said, hey, I was in this video game. I didn't get any money for it. You could look at the Diego Pavia thing, a guy who played junior college football, who gets involved in a lawsuit, wins, and then now, if you're a junior college athlete, it's looking like your eligibility will not count towards NCAA eligibility. And then, of course, another bottom-up move. This is an individual student athlete and his lawyer making this move that is then going to cause potentially a major change in college athletics. I just find it so interesting that we're so accustomed to thinking, hey, the answers have to come from the top when maybe a lot of this comes from the bottom too.
That is such a fascinating perspective on it. And I think you said it perfectly. I think to underscore it, we're seeing a historic shift, right? Schools have had the power for the longest time. NCAA has had the power for the longest time. We are getting to a point where the players are getting leverage and power, right? Their voices are being heard. There are resolutions in favor of them. It's historic. We have not seen something like this maybe ever in the NCAA history. And I think it's a great thing. I am very supportive of that. But I also think that without understanding of what actually is allowable, what isn't, you're going to keep having these rogue moves and decisions that are going to create conflicting precedent, and it's just going to be problematic. And that's where legislation, or at least clear guidance, comes in.
It is frustrating. I know coaches have talked about how frustrating it can be from their perspective as well. They're looking for answers. Everyone's looking for answers. I've seen people say that, what is it, the AFCA, the Coaches Association, they want guidance from them in football. Do you think that, like with this House settlement, is that going to is that really going to lead to stabilizing changes in college sports, or do you think even after that, the line will continue to be pushed and tested?
Well, I guess here's the thing with any kind of law or regulation, it's going to be pushed, right? It's pushed and pulled. Like it's tug of war, right? You're always seeing this game of tug of war between both sides, right? And I think it's just, I think anytime you have that, eventually the government will step in or a regulating body will step in and saying, here is the clear line, right? When there is this push and pull, and we're not getting that, right? So there's going to be this push and pull. And honestly, some of the pushes are going to be, completely obsolete when it gets pulled the next week. And there's just the precedent doesn't seem to matter, or it matters until it doesn't. Maybe that's the
Right.
best way to frame it.
I think that's what it is. It matters until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Which it's wild. It's wild. But I have to say, I know so many. You mentioned Darren Heitner before. He's, I would say, one of the foremost attorneys in the world of NIL, right? I mean, it's amazing the thought process and the ideas that you and your fellow attorneys have had in this whole discussion. It's fascinating.
I think so too. And Darren especially is an incredibly sharp mind and good person. And I'm excited to see what he's doing to help change the landscape, at least for however long his changes can last.
However long it lasts. Yeah, that's
for sure.
the way to put it.
I think so too.
Okay. So Xavier Lucas, another interesting story. Anything else that you want to add on this topic?
Yeah, I'd like to briefly just point out that I've worked on the institution side of this too, right? I've worked with collectives, and one thing I want to highlight is schools and institutions and collectives are not the bad guys, right? And the players aren't the bad guys. There seems to be this media narrative, or at least perceived narrative, maybe is a better way to describe it, that one of the sides is bad and one of the sides is good. But I'd like to say with the collective that I worked on, they bent over backwards trying to do right by the player, right? And they were trying to do everything that they could within NCAA compliance and US law to comply, and while also making sure the player was taken care of. And sometimes I think we have a forced narrative with this kind of stuff that these two opposing sides are really opposing, when I think the framework really should be that they're trying to work together within the framework, however flimsy this framework actually may be, to try to achieve the best outcome, right? And I think that without any clear guidance, this narrative and manufactured division is continued to be fueled and perpetuated to generate buzz. And I think it creates more problems than solutions. And maybe it's indicative of a larger societal trend or problem with, manufactured division. And I think we see that in all points in life, when these sides really can and should, and I've seen it, work together to, better the problem and to get the best outcome for both the school and the university. And I know both of them have their own selfish and justified self-interest, right? Like they need to be, that's how it is. But these interests align more times than they don't. And I don't think that's highlighted enough. And this scenario that we're talking about between Lucas and Wisconsin is an extreme, right? And that's what generates the buzz. And that's what's worth talking about, are these extremes. But I don't think these extremes are representative of the state of college sports. And I think that's worth saying.
Well said. Well said, Sam. Well, we truly appreciate all of your time and insight. Once again, our first repeat guest, Sam, I'll say it now. We will be having you on again if you'd like to come back. Things continue to change. I mean, look, we spoke about, I don't know, less than a month ago, and these two things, which are potentially revolutionary moves in the world of college athletics, have popped up since then. So always a pleasure, Sam. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, there you have it. Sam Finkel, our first repeat guest, joining us on the Around the Huddle podcast. I had a great chat about so many things beyond college, but beyond just the game. And again, we're going to have him back. Things are going to change. He is the guy who has all the insight on the legal side of the world of college athletics. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes on our YouTube page. Also, check out PAC-Hub, bottom of your screen, PAC-HUB.com. We spoke all about the transfer portal. Whether that becomes obsolete or not doesn't matter, because the PAC-Hub portal, I should say, is still a great way to get discovered by college coaches. If you want to leave your current institution, enter the PAC-Hub portal. Enter the transfer portal, enter the PAC-Hub portal. You will get linked up. You'll find, your school coaches. You'll find your athlete. PAC-HUB.com. Again, a big thanks to all of you for joining us today. We will talk to you next time on the Around the Huddle podcast.